Now I want to go back to the service last night at Sydney Opera House. It was very poignant, the reflection of the Jewish community there, hosted by our very own, of course, Shari Markson. Now, this followed the National Day of Mourning for those 15 people killed at Bondi in December. The Prime Minister used it to express his sincere sorrow, and he once again apologised to the Jewish community.
Tragically, we are gathered here tonight because on the 14th of December, everything changed. And for that, I am sorry. I am deeply and profoundly sorry that we could not protect your loved ones from this evil.
It was a long time coming. I mean, at least he has now said sorry. Former Queensland Liberal Premier, Sky News Friday night regular Campbell Newman. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you, Campbell. Too little, too late from the PM?
Definitely, Steve, and great to be back with you in 2026. Yeah, look, he's made the apology, and that was desperately needed for the, if you like, the whole feeling of being a Jewish Australian, I think, at the moment. So that needed to happen. Let's hope that we see practical action now, even before the Royal Commission's ended, to ensure that Jewish people in Australia are protected.
But I wonder what you can do. I mean, we had an absolutely appalling incident in Melbourne during the week where there were 5 young Jewish boys in Elstonwick near the Adas synagogue that was firebombed. They were going home from school. It was just on dusk, and they were obviously wearing Jewish clothing. And 2 blokes in a white ute turned up, did a U-turn, almost ran one of these kids over, and they were shouting out Heil Hitler and doing Nazi salutes. I mean, how does a complicated piece of legislation passed in Canberra stop that happening?
Well, I guess that'd be one of my points, Steve, in that we have plenty of laws in our statute books. I totally reject what happened in Canberra this week in terms of those new laws. They weren't needed, and indeed it's a really disturbing chapter in the life of this nation. I think it's a step on the way to tyranny. But just to properly answer your question, there are plenty of laws on the statute books. Just as when I was Premier and I had to go after bikie gangs, at the time we passed some fairly tough legislation, which did have sunset clauses, by the way. But, you know, as I've reflected in the 10 years since, that wasn't required. What was required to deal with bikie gangs was the same medicine that's required to deal with anti-Semitism and these sorts of ugly incidents, and that is political will. The political will to call it out in the beginning, the political will to kick the police up the backside and get them to do their job properly. And, you know, there have been so many moments in the last 2 and a bit years where police, you know, allowed protests to happen while, you know, arresting the lone Jewish person or person waving the Israeli flag. All that sort of stuff adds up, Steve. But if the police and the security services, ASIO example, for example, are doing their job properly, we will nip this in the bud.
As a proud Australian and a proud Queenslander, what did you make of the sight of snipers on the roof of the Opera House last night?
Gee, Steve, is this the way we're going to live going forward? I really, really hope not.
Yep.
And I want to say this evening that, again, my view about what happened at Bondi, the atmosphere, the environment was created by the inaction of federal and state leaders over a 2-year period. That's very clear to me. But I'm going to say this evening that one of the reasons we've seen this political response from the government and the laws passed is more about protecting those who didn't perform and deal with it. It's like, why did those guys get their hands on guns, even though, you know, one of them was on a watch list? I mean, I could go on. You know, the police and people in ASIO need to do a better job, and that's what I'd be pushing if I was in politics and in government right now.
Campbell, I bumped into a former, and I won't name him, senior federal Liberal last week. It might have been the week before. And he said, we were talking about the Liberal leadership, and I raised the name of Josh Frydenberg, and this senior Liberal, and your head's going to swell here, said to me, I think Josh may have just had his Campbell Newman moment, obviously referring to the fact that you were made leader before you had a seat. So I said, I hope so, because, I mean, when you look at the way Josh Frydenberg handled himself post the Bondi terror attack and even during the anti-Semitism problems the country was dealing with when he did the documentary for Sky, that's the sort of leader we need, surely, in Canberra, in charge of the Liberals. Well,
I think he certainly has the force of personality and the character and the standing to do that. That's a matter for the Liberal Party. But one of the big tests I would be putting forward for him is, can he appreciate that what the National Party did the other day, I'm not talking about bailing out of the coalition agreement and calling on Lee to go. That's not appropriate in my opinion. But what they felt they had to do, and I support, which was to vote against this odious legislation. Is Josh Frydenberg capable of understanding, respecting and being able to pull them back into the fold? That's the big issue right now. I would hope that he is. And I think, of all the people out there, he could do it. It does concern me a bit, though, that, he's more of the left. And they are bleeding votes to people like Pauline Hanson and One Nation, and to other minor parties like the Libertarian Party, which I'm a member of. And it's because people feel let down and dismayed by the Liberal Party. And the events of this week really cement that. I cannot believe that the Liberal Party supported that legislation. These are the people. This is the party who, going back some years, was debating getting rid of 18C. So now they've gone completely 180 degrees off in the other direction.
Well, you've got a surging One Nation that you just mentioned, and you've got the Nats now, the Nationals out there, on their own, uncoupled from the coalition. I mean, if you drop the S off the Nationals and form the National One Nation Party, can that happen?
Yeah, well, I'm not privy to their internal discussions, I'm sure, but people are talking about that as something could happen. But I think One Nation are surging now. I think that prior to this, the news poll federally had them at 22% primary ahead of the coalition. I would say that after this they'll go to 25. And another thought that I give you this evening is, there's now problems, I think, for David Crisafulli, the LNP in Queensland, because, if that's the national primary for the One Nation Party, there are seats in Queensland, they'll be doing much better than that, and they could come in ahead of LNP members of parliament at the next state election. So does that mean there might have to be a coalition government in Queensland, LNP and One Nation? I think that's actually something that could be on the cards if things remain this way.
Fascinating times. I mean, what happens to federal LNP members in Queensland now that the coalition split? What do they do?
Oh, well, that's really difficult. Just very quickly for viewers to understand. I mean, they're members of the LNP in Queensland, but then they have sort of got an arrangement where they nominate to be in either the Libs or the Nats when they go to Canberra. So you've got people like Matt Canavan, who's LNP, but he's in the National Party sort of party room. Someone like some of the other senators who will be then sitting as Libs. So, it comes home to roost in Queensland. How are they going to sit side by side at the next state conference? The LNP has been a successful sort of wedding, political terms here in Queensland, but can it be sustained going forward after what's just happened?
Just briefly, in the last 10 seconds we've got, what did you make of the uncoupling of the gun laws and what's going to happen with gun laws in the country? Because there's a number of states that just simply don't agree with it.
Well, I don't agree with it. I think it's outrageous what's going on. The guns may have been the instruments of that terrible outrage at Bondi, but they're in the hands of people who would have killed, whether it be driving a vehicle or using a knife or a homemade explosive or whatever. They will always find a way. And where we're going in this country, the only people who will have guns, mark my words, will be the police, the ADF and either criminals who have no trouble getting guns and want to be terrorists. That's the bottom line, Steve. People who want to do bad, evil things will always find a way. And, you know, we've got tough gun laws in this country. They didn't need to be changed, and that was just a political tactic by our Prime Minister in the aftermath of Bondi, you know, desperately trying to change the narrative.
Great to have you back with us on a Friday night, Campbell. Good on you, mate. I'll talk to you next week.